Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 10 Round of 12 recap. We are in the playoffs. I'm IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. I'm joined, as always, by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
And we are here to recap the first round of the playoffs. Again, the first four teams had a bye, which is why we're calling this the Round of 12. We had 5v12, 6v11, 7v10, 8v9. We're going to give you a quick rundown here as to what all happened. Screenshots should be giving it away, so here we go. First round was the Summit County Psyducks against the mighty Mill Tanks. As we see, the Psyducks came away with a 5-0 victory. We saw Rain Dance come out from the Mill Tanks, which was pretty fun, but Mantine, of course, laughs at you. We also have a very questionable Toxic Orb Yawn Flareon, questionable at best, though it could have put in quite a bit of work. We saw a lot of cool stuff with Bolton outspeeding everything, but all it really took was getting in that Rapidash for its second Calm Mind sweep of the season, getting a couple of KOs there at the end. Steve, it was another awesome performance from the Psyducks, maybe starting to turn things around in time for the playoffs. What do you think?
Yeah, great performance for them. I did really like the rain, especially for Toxicroak. Did really well in it, was able to handle the Mantine, threaten it out, at least with Thunder Punch. So great things from Tony here at the end of the season. But yeah, Zach takes it, and excited to see if he can keep it going in future rounds.
Yeah, I don't think we can underestimate Tony, though. The last couple weeks, he really did look like a much better, much improved player. So big shout out to the Mill Tanks, even without a W, just seemingly becoming a lot better, a lot more reliable. So we're going to move on next to the 6v11. That was the Seattle Steamrollers taking on the Baltimore Aquarius. And we see the Steamrollers with the 4-0 victory. Unfortunate punish on Haunter missing the Will-O-Wisp on an Arctivish switch-in. Aurora Veil then saves Arctivish from a Thunderbolt as well. Questionable decision to substitute down to 2%, but it saved him from the Sucker Punch. Life Orb will end up taking that KO in the Arctivish, and from there it's really just biding his time until Moltres Galar can sweep at the end. We see the two special attack boosts there from the nasty plot. Toxic does not get rid of the Moltres in time. Chad's starting to feel a little more comfortable with his team here. We see just a couple of individual threats being able to sweep by themselves, and, well, sure led Chad to a pretty easy victory here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, certainly did. It was nice to see the Eldegoss and Abomasnow here to support the team, but that's not the grass type on his team we all want to see. Bring us more of the leaf guy, Chad.
Absolutely. Let us just enjoy the Calyrex, please. We're going to move on then to the 7v10. That was the Akron Agrons against the Cleveland Castforms. This may have been my favorite match. I think the Agrons did sneak away with a 2-0 victory here. Bronzong early in the game able to wall Dugtrio even through two Toxics into the Steel type. A Body Press just takes that out. Is Craggle the Cursula answer in return? Well, maybe, maybe not, but it answered the Mr. Mime with a critical hit knockoff after a couple of turns of rocks. We saw a really nice Steel Roller come out from Joey. Really loved the tech there on Bronzong with his own grassy terrain. Really cool there. But then we saw the response to Yancey putting on the screws there with a couple of really nice Diamond Storms, boosting that defense up quite a bit. Gastrodon with a couple KOs. Really liked the Hydro Pump choice on there to take out the Sand Slash. Really nice trade there. Couple KOs from that. However, then the 3% Thwacky after coming in on rocks. Very close to throwing this one away, but even after rocks and all that, it was still able to take a couple of KOs. KO the Cursula and the Diancie at the end to save the Agrons season. Of course, it would come down to Thwacky saving them. That's just pretty typical for the Agrons, but a great showing from the Castforms too.
Yeah, it was overall a great match. On the side of the Agrons, they kind of struggled to make it through this bulkier Castforms team, just barely hanging on long enough to make it through. So we'll see if that bodes well for their future in the playoffs.
Absolutely. I know you're excited at another chance at the Agrons to see if maybe they've improved. And finally, we have the 8v9 matchup, a couple of classic stallish teams with the Close Combat Club and the Cincinnati Incineroar. As we see for the fourth time, no upset here. The Close Combat Club take it 4-0. Love the Trick Room Teleport Executory. Hasn't brought it much, but maybe he heard our video before it came out. That was a great call from John, I think, there. But the Blimp stopping the Machamp, that was a great call from Matt as well. I haven't seen the Drifblim all that much, but it really stopped the Machamp cold there. We don't see much in the way of electric immunities from John's team, but Executor and the Registeel able to wall the Jolteon pretty well, though Jolteon also trying to put up its own defenses with the light screens. it took more than halfway through the match for a single KO to be taken, but Durant able to KO the Machamp. However, it took way too much damage in return and could not swap in again on rocks. John did a great job keeping the rocks up. Porygon Z Psychic was a great choice of neutral move to keep the Hitmonchan away. Saw a teleport into it on one time on the Hitmonchan. We also saw the Jellicent playing around Hitmonchan's Rapid Spin very well as well. Even if it went down to a crit Thunder Punch, was still able to stop Rapid Spin long enough for John to be able to take that out. Played well around the light screen. Porygon Z just ripped holes until Exeggutor at the very end was able to take down the Quagsire. Really nice match from John. He's starting to put things together himself too. This was excellent to watch. Really fun match.
Yeah, of course, very excellent. He'll have a tough match coming up. Shame to see the comeback season for the Cincinnati Incineroar being over so soon, but better luck, in their next season.
Absolutely, and that means that we didn't have any upsets, so we just have the typical 1v8, 2v7, 3v6, and 4v5 in the quarterfinals. So we're going to take a little bit of time here and look at some of the matchups ahead of time, so maybe you have an idea of what you're going to be looking at with the matchups coming up. So of course we're going to start off with the 1v8, a little bit closer in depth here as we take a look at the full suite of mons. The Newport Noctowls, 7-1 at the end of the season, going against the Close Combat Club. This is the largest gap, of course, between two teams that are playing, but there's still plenty to talk about because the Close Combat Club have quite a few tools here, which is pretty nice. Of course, the first thing you have to look at in this matchup from the Noctowls is that Electric Terrain core that has put in so much work, and the immunity to that, the Manectric, ooh, that's a little bit risky if you ask me. I'm not sure how much damage the Manectric is going to be able to put back onto the Raichu Alola, the Pincurchin. Scald is pretty nice against the Manectric, the Psyshock, Psychic, and plenty of other coverage from Raichu able to hit into that pretty well. On John's side, one thing we've seen quite often is the Trick Room. How does Trick Room mons look? Machamp, it's actually looking pretty strong, I have to say. Mudsdale, the typical physical defensive answer, maybe not all there. Aromatisse may need to commit a little bit to special defense too, because that Porygon Z, so who knows if he can bring both, if either of them would do the job against Machamp. And of course, Porygon Z, I already mentioned. What's going to stop that? Aromatisse? Maybe, maybe not. Noivern could be a key there as well. Frisk is an outstanding ability, and the sooner that Jimmy finds out what set that Porygon Z is running, the better for sure. It seems like overall Protect is going to be a good move for the Noctowls against John, trying to scout out some of those choice items that John likes to favor on Pori Z, as well as the Switcheroo Manectric, so that's an interesting possibility. One other very interesting aspect of the matchup is going to be the hazards. Jimmy does tend to favor the rocks, maybe a little bit more than other coaches, but Xatu is just the worst matchup you can imagine for Mudsdale. Really doesn't take anything from fighting or ground moves. Heavy Slam, not all that much either, where Xatu gets some interesting coverage or can just teleport out to ensure that he gets a really nice switch in there. Potentially could trade hazards. We know that Jimmy's going to be favorably looking for that matchup as well, maybe just trying to chip the Xatu. Reggie's Tail has come pretty often, and setting up rocks could be really nice for John as well. I'd like to shout out the Pincurchin a little bit. Those spikes could come up relatively easily. Xatu, of course, can be threatened out by electric coverage. Manectric, sure, can come in, but then what's it going to do back? Not that much, I'm going to be honest. And Spikes against John looks really, really good. Only Xatu is immune to those, and once again, that's scared out by electric coverage, so take a look at that as well. For just general answers on the Noctowl side, Decidueye is defensively pretty great. It's normally an offensive threat, but if you're looking for something from a champ, why not a Colbur Berry? If you're looking something for Porygon Z, why not something that's immune to normal? Actually, a defensive or mixed Decidueye could be really interesting, especially with something like Roost and maybe Defog. Looking at the Colbur, pretty nice. Mudsdale is sick as always. That Spikes can Pincurchin I looked at as well. And on John's side, Jellicent's a bit of a mixed bag. We look at the very top mons, the Raichu Alola, the Pincurchin, the Decidueye. Not a very good matchup at all. In fact, kind of a liability there. And yet against the rest of his team, against Noivern, really nice. Blaziken, one of his only answers. Honestly, Blaziken looks pretty nice against him, so maybe need that. Mudsdale, the water coverage, you're going to need it too. So maybe it's going to be putting in a little bit of work. We talked about Exeggutor last time as well. The Tall Tree requires some very special coverage if the electric mons are going to answer it. We talked about Manectric a little bit, but Exeggutor may be the better answer. And finally, I think my little interesting pick of a lower tier mon from John could be that Comfey. Look for that potentially to set up some Calm Mind, some nice little priority moves there. Calm Mind, of course, raising special defense against mons like Noivern and Raichu that outspeed it, and otherwise able to just get up boosts and priority away. So kind of an interesting mixed bag matchup. Obviously, you have to favor the Noctowl, Steve, but this is actually maybe a little bit closer than we thought. Maybe Jimmy won't have all the answers this time.
Yeah, this is looking like a real close, real good matchup. It'll be exciting to see it. This will be, of course, our first time seeing this matchup this season. These coaches did not play in the regular season, so it's going to be very exciting either way.
Absolutely. Of course, we have plenty more exciting matches, and this time too, because it's the two of us, we get to talk about our own teams a little bit. So, Steve, as we move on to the number 2 versus 7, the Wobbuffets versus the Agrons, tell us a little bit about what went into your prep against Joey for the playoffs.
In my matchup upcoming here against the Akron Agrons, taking a look at it, I had previously won this matchup, and with that in mind, I knew I could do things similar, but I had to, of course, keep things a little bit updated. I know after our last matchup, I had mentioned to Joey that Turtonator looked great against my team. After a Shell Smash, it was KOing everything and forced me to change my Pillow Swine last second to invest more in its special bulk so it could take a hit. So I knew that would be coming this time, and I had to prepare for it, kind of prompting Licky Licky to really come and be a specially defensive wall and answer there. Wasn't around last time, but definitely enters the Turtonator now. I also know last time Joey struggled a lot with the Dracloak, and after considering his possible answers to it and kind of how effective it was, I ended up not bringing it this time, and that certainly could pay off, if he brings especially threats like Kraganol that would face well against the Dracloak, but don't really fare well against the rest of my team. Kraganol especially, comes to mind as kind of losing to almost all of my key pieces, Chandelure, Frizzine, Escavalier, even Pillowswine and Licky Licky wall it and can hit it back. So really nothing good for it there. Thwacky, of course, the big offensive threat that it is, as well as providing support for Joey's team, will be interesting to deal with. Again, I do like the grassy terrain, and we saw that in our previous matchup because Verizian is able to abuse that. I also have decent answers to Thwacky, although it is a little bit prediction-based. Escavalier in general can be a very great answer. Just, have to watch out about him pivoting out with U-turn into something for a favorable matchup. Stojurner would be an interesting pick for the Agrons here. Gets a lot of interesting coverage moves that could hit multiple threats quite well. But Joey didn't bring it last time and really hasn't been favoring it. I don't expect it to come, but it's something I'm definitely keeping my eye on as a surprise. Scarf, Adamant Sojourner could do massive damage to a lot of the Mons. From my side, I could say I know what I'm bringing here. Chandelure, of course, looks fantastic as always. Provides a great offensive utility as well as defense. Joey has a lot of rapid spinners, having an immunity to rapid spin, very beneficial. Verizian, although defensively in this matchup, not the best, with only really being good against the Lantern or Sandslash as a switch-in. But in terms of offense, always fantastic. At +2, able to get through most of the team with ease between its stabs and Stone Edge, as well as with that high special defense and taking maybe a stray attack from the Slurpuff or the Acelgor or something, getting a weakness policy proc to bring it up to +4 and just break through everything. Fantastic. Pillowswine and Licky Licky, Escavalier, all of them looking like great defensive pieces here. And then Archeops will be coming once again. A great defensive piece from last time, being able to switch in reliably against the Moltres, taking its stabs with ease and roosting off the damage. Once again, great piece there, able to threaten out a key member of his team, Hitmontop, provide great pressure with the stabs, and then remove hazards and keep itself healthy with Roost. So overall, I do like myself adapting the team a little bit to try and keep ahead of some expected changes from Joey, and looking forward to the match.
Absolutely. You already mentioned that you two played each other in Week 7. It was only a 3-0, which somehow is your smallest margin of victory against Joey in recent times. But as we also said before, it didn't feel that close, did it? I'd like to go and highlight the work that Archeops put in that time around. A little bit of a defensive piece as well, which was really interesting to see. It just seems like overall your higher speed tiers are higher aside from the Excelgor, and maybe Joey just needs to find that correct prediction to set up with something like the Slurpuff or Sandslash or Turtonator, as you mentioned, and that could be what it comes down to. So, nice little rivalry grudge match, kind of in the sense that Joey's still looking for that big W against you. See if we can find it here. And next up, we're going to go with the 3 versus 6. It's the Bouffalant versus the Steamrollers, an absolutely classic matchup in this league where I got to prepare for Chad once again, who's been getting my number a little bit recently. Going over his team, he's just got some big, giant threats, and so a couple supporting pieces around it. I think maybe the month that best exemplifies some of the support around it, probably the two that stand out are the Klefki and the Dredagon there for sure. Klefki is pretty much there to set up screens, which are very annoying for my team to handle. Thunderwave, a little bit annoying, though I do have a couple of really nice answers to it. The Dredagon, though, is especially terrifying, I think, for my team in particular, without that fairy type, without particularly great switch-ins. You know how important Steelix is going to be to try and wall some of the rest of this team. We see how well it does against Klefki, against Cinccino, and potentially against things like Slowking as well. So what are Klefki and Dredagon trying to set up for? Well, a couple of maybe underrated pieces in there. The Pinsir and the Glaceon. Glaceon's ice coverage is fantastic. My two best resists to it are water types, which, oh boy, I don't know how to tell you this, but Freeze Dry hits those super effectively. So maybe a little bit of a standout piece there in the Glaceon. Pinsir has a really nice speed tier if it chooses to go with the Scarf. And we've seen how good fighting coverage has been against me for most of the season. He doesn't have a true fighting type. That's going to be that Pinsir, but Pinsir definitely could put some of the screws on there too. Cinccino is something he hasn't favored quite as much this season, but is, I believe, his highest pick that is remaining. And we know how good that tail slap can be with the normal stab. I do have a couple answers to it, but Cinccino also really nice for having coverage like Rock Blast as well as U-Turn to be able to get out of there pretty easily. Of course, it really comes down to the big offensive pieces there, right? That Slowking Galar has taken names at least one or two sweeps this season. Calm Mind is terrifying. Trick Room Attack is terrifying. 4 Attack's terrifying. You know what kind of coverage this thing gets? There's really no true Waller answer on my team, especially special attackers. You know how especially bulky Slowking is. And that would require a lot of, I think, special coverage on my team. Not on the special side, but things just for the Slowking. That Moltres Galar, of course, Dark Flying, I believe recently making some waves in OU. Maybe we'll underestimate this thing a little bit, and it needs to move up a tier or two. Not really sure. After an agility and a special attack boost, oh boy, I'm not really sure what's going to stop it. Arctivish, of course, is probably the big answer. Big thing, though, there is no water immunity on my team. I've seen basically every other time that Chad's faced off against someone, they've had a water absorb mon, and the Bouffalant do not have anything to really take advantage of the Arctivish. I think Abomasnow actually might be the biggest threat there too, because grass coverage against the Bouffalant, very, very strong. Guzzlord is the answer, not really because of ice coverage. So Chad actually with some really great matchups, and they hire these standout portions of the team already in particular. What can the Bouffalant do about that? It may end up being some type resist berries, some special investment, and trying to get some calcs in there. The other big thing is that I think the Bouffalant have a lot of the speed advantage too. It can be some easier scarfs to put on there. Something like the Aerodactyl already outspeeds Tentacruel's actually a really nice answer for quite a few of these ice types, although it's a little bit pressured. I already mentioned how good Steelix looks in the matchup too. Body press against a lot of these mons is fantastic. And one thing that really stands about Chad's team, it doesn't have that many resists to things like steel and fire. The issue is the Bouffalant don't have a fire type, but something like Steelix can run Iron Head, something like Guzzlord can run Heat Crash, Mesprit could come running Fire Punch. Quite a few options potentially to take care of things there. I think, as always, the Aerodactyl looks outstanding in the matchup too. Being able to hit all the ice types super effectively, being able to hit things like the Klefki, the Moltres, the Slowking, just adding in Earthquake and having a really strong Edgequake coverage with that speed and that power looks fantastic in the matchup. Chad also doesn't have an electric immunity, so Rotom Frost can come in pretty easily, spam Blizzards if he decides to bring Hail, which definitely seems likely, or just Volt Switch around, so Rotom outstanding in the matchup. Hisuian also with lots of great just free fighting attacks. It's really only the Slowking that can tank that particularly easily, so potentially that would be a really nice answer there too. Guzzlord is something that I know I've really only brought in the big matchups, and actually looks really nice again there too. Probably the most sturdy Fishious Rend resist that the Bouffalant have got. And Guzzlord has a variety of coverage, as we already mentioned, things like the Heat Crash and how great the knockoff would be, and actually kind of underrated how good Dragon coverage is against him too. Klefki is both the Steel type and the Fairy type for Chad, so if that goes down, Outrage actually is kind of free, which is really funny and could take a couple KOs as well. So overall, really interesting, fun matchup. It's about Chad trying to set up his top mons, and about the Bouffalant trying to stop that setup and just use the superior power and stats of the team. What do you think about the matchup, Steve?
You definitely hit it on the head there. When these teams had met previously this season in Week 8, the Bouffalant were able to take the 1-0 victory and what would be best described as a serious meme match to close out the season. So we really haven't seen a full test of their power against each other. So it'll be interesting to see that for the first time this season. Lots of key members on both teams. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Absolutely, and that means we have to finish up what we've got here with the 4v5. It's Route 1 Burbs and the Summit County Psyducks. Once again, we have to talk about teams that we are not or not facing, but I know Steve can give us a nice little breakdown. We've talked about these two teams before playing, haven't we, Steve?
Oh, yes, we most certainly have. We've covered them a lot. But yeah, for this matchup in particular, the Bolton and the Salazzle on the side of the Psyducks having the speed advantage, being able to apply a lot of pressure. I know Zach's been favoring the Bolton and its quickness and ability to pivot. However, the Burbs do have a couple answers to it, especially Raichu and Flygon being able to resist the electric stab, but they both would fall to various coverage moves. Play Rough, for example, would hit both of them pretty hard due to Raichu's frail defense. For the other fast threat I mentioned, Salazzle, again, not the stab's not looking great into the Burbs team. However, something like a subtoxic corrosion set could do quite a number, being able to outspeed and just slowly wear down the entire other team. Another mon on the side of the Psyducks that looks really good to us is Gliscopod. Great priority against kind of the frailer Burbs team, and then also the physical bulk that can take a couple hits from some of these key attackers we'll talk about in a bit. Talking about kind of the physical bulk, Leafeon. Leafeon looks actually surprisingly good in this matchup. The grass stab looking good, with the exception of hitting Charizard and Sandslash but also its physical defense against key threats like Lycanroc, Midday, Flygon, Gallade, not really the Sandslash, but the other three. Fantastic choice there. Could also be paired well with Mantine to form kind of the defensive core the Psyducks will need this week, being able to heal everything up with Heal Bell, maybe do some wish passing, providing the grass coverage and attacking. Could be quite effective. Mentioned the Mantine, key defensive piece. Both of these teams having their key water-absorbed defensive pieces. I'm sure we'll see both of them around, although the Mantine will probably face a lot of pressure from the Burbs, as it's kind of essential for checking many key threats. On the side of the Burbs, Lycanroc Midday was the story of last time with its Stone Edge and the fact that it hit or missed determining the game. Look for it to, again, have a fantastic time. Just between Close Combat and Stone Edge, does great on everything except Claydol. Can run Crunch for Claydol, but that really depends on how seriously Claydol's taken as a threat. Otherwise, Flygon, the tier 100 pick, another great pick here. Strong stabs that do well against the team, again, with the exception of Claydol. Mantine also can wall a little bit, and especially if it's bringing Skull to burn things or some ice coverage. But again, Mantine's going to be a little pressured here. In Claydol, there are ways to take advantage of it, such as Dragon Dancing up. Michael, of course, has a couple other threats that can really do well. Charizard, Gallade, Sandslash, Alola. All of them have their places, and they all can certainly pick some favorable matchups and do well. Defensively, look for Vaporeon, of course, to come out and be the wall and team support it is. Look for Shuckle to come out early and provide webs and rock support, especially because the Psyducks have the faster team. Kind of the webs support from Shuckle will be critical if Michael wants to have the speed advantage throughout without using some alternative methods. Amara also is a fantastic choice here, providing Hail for Sandslash Alola to sweep, providing Sand for Lycanroc Midday to sweep, providing Aurora Veil support for just general bulk. Tons of utility packed into one low-tier mon. Would be a fantastic choice depending on the wind conditions the Burbs are going for. Any other comments on this matchup?
Yeah, we mentioned week one a little bit about the Lycanroc. The other mon in there was the Scrafty, and it was kind of a story of two failed sweeps and how one came kind of after the other, and that was really what determined that matchup. So kind of interested there. Also really cool to see the amount of hazards that could potentially come down. We have some very commonly brought hazard setters from the Burbs and some very commonly brought hazard removers from the Psyducks with the Claydol Rapid Spin and the Mantine Defox. That should be an absolutely amazing hazard battle within the battle itself. So that's going to do it for us. Do you think there are going to be any upsets this week? A top 4 should be moving on, but it seems like every time there's at least one upset. Who's it going to be this time? Surely not one of us, I'm sure. But we're just going to have to find out next time. So join us as we find out who's going to make the top 4 this season. See you then.